Hey guys, just real fast, I wanted to let you know that this interview may contain some spoilers for Dresden Files. I wasn't going to tell Jim Butcher that he wasn't allowed to talk about specific things, so I didn't put any kind of embargo on him for this video. So I don't think it's anything completely series breaking. I don't really think we go into names too much, but I just don't want anybody being like, oh, you ruined the whole series for me or something like that. So watch at you guys' own peril, and I will talk to you in the comments. Hey, what's up, bookworms? A little something special for you today, and if you saw the episode title, I'm sure you know what that is. This is an author that needs no introduction from me. This is the best-selling author of the Dresden Files, Codex Alera, and more, and the undisputed king of urban fantasy, Mr. Jim Butcher. How are you, sir?
Good. How you doing?
I am excellent. Like, first, I want to say thank you for agreeing to do this, and second, thank you for creating Michael Carpenter.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you very much.
I think I just tipped my hand on what my favorite character was here. So I think I got a little boost on the channel about 6 months ago when I think you saw the reaction video that I made to reading the last couple of chapters of Changes. That was something that viewers really wanted me to do. And after I did it, I said, oh, okay, well, I can see why now. So I hope that, first, thank you for that. And second, I hope it really was as satisfying as you said it was.
Oh my gosh, to finally write that after I've been planning it for so long.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I can imagine. So you did have that plan for quite a while, huh?
Yeah, about 10 years, so I was just very excited. I mean, once the fans were making their own cartoons about it, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm feeling good about this book now.
Okay, so I have a ton of viewer questions, but I got a couple of my own here first. And the first one kind of requires me to give you a little bit of a brief story about how I got in the series. I just started reading the series last December and read them all real fast. And I'm talking Dresden. I haven't gotten into Codex Alera yet, but I just started reading Dresden, and I read the whole thing right before Peace Talks came out. And I think what it was that the series was kind of sold incorrectly to me. A friend said, it's like Harry Potter for adults. And I was like, I hear that about so much stuff. So I kind of blew it off. And then one day, after I started this channel, a viewer was like, Mike, you love Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Why aren't you reading Dresden Files? I was like, I didn't know it was like that. He's like, it's kind of like Buffy, but take like the angel investigation side, but make him, instead of a vampire, make it John Constantine from Hellblazer. And I was like, well, holy shit, that sounds right up my alley. Do you think that's a fair comparison?
Yeah, sure. I'll take it.
Well, to me, those are two properties that I obviously love quite a bit. You'll probably hear that quite a bit in this interview, but it took me so long that, it's one of those things I kind of felt like it was the hole that had been missing in my life since Buffy and Angel went off the air. So don't want to just like gush about it, but it really did kind of hit that spot that I had been missing, and it felt like coming home again. So, I mean, would you say that those are two properties that you took any influence from at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just a wee bit, just a wee tiny bit. Yeah.
A little tiny bit. Okay, so we have kind of similar origins growing up, it sounds like. I read your introduction before Stormfront, and it sounds like, we kind of started with some of the same heavy hitters here. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, George Lucas, obviously. Do you think that there's any other inspiration besides those three that you had before you wrote Dresden Files that you think would actually be the cause of all this?
Probably the biggest inspiration was Roger Zelazny's Amber series. Starts with 9 Princes in Amber and goes from there. There's like 10 books. They're like little tiny books, a couple of 100 pages long, maybe, manuscript pages long. But it was kind of the first of the sword and pistol fantasy that I'd read. And the Amber series is very much, it's a series that's all about parallel realities. And the Princes of Amber are the ones who can walk through all these different parallel realities. So if they get angry at you, they can walk to the parallel reality where they are a god who is showing up to pick up their army to go to the apocalypse, and then just have that army follow them over to your house and ruin your day. So they kind of have this, this interdimensional movement capability that makes them amazing.
Okay,
but
that's one that I get recommended quite a bit, and a lot of people have said it is one of your big influences. So it
is. It's a huge influence. It's a good series. It was written with that very hard, pulpy style, and yet Zelazny also works, his own poetry into the writing. But it was also addressing all these serious fantasy situations, which was a first for me to go at fantasy with modern sensibility. So that was really cool, and that was what I think what started the inspiration for me for working on the Dresden Files. Like, man, I really like the idea of mixing up the modern world with fantasy tropes and fantasy problems. Let's see what happens.
I think it's worked out okay for you. So
Seems
anyone
good,
who's
yeah.
watched interviews or panels with you knows you get a lot of the same questions over and over again. So I tried to change it up a bit, and what I did was I just opened this up to viewers, and I got about 300 responses. Obviously, they all want to ask questions. So a lot of repeats there and a lot of bad questions. So I kind of whittled it down to about 40 of the good ones here. So if it's too many, just say so. We'll just kind of take them as they go. Some are obviously, most of them are going to be Dresden related, but there are some other things in there. Like this one, it says, hey, what do you prefer, Star Wars or Star Trek? And I think it's funny because you answered this in one of your books.
Yeah.
Okay, like both, right?
For me, it's Star Wars, especially since Mandalorian came out. Trek, I don't mind Trek, but it's not like my spiritual home. I need swords and space wizards.
I'm right there with you. And Mandalorian does kind of almost feel like people who grew up with the original trilogy. It almost feels like coming home a little bit, don't it?
Oh, I know. I'm loving the heck out of it.
It's what I've been begging for. Okay, what are if you had to pick 3 favorite Dresden books, which would they be?
Probably Changes, Peace Talks, and Battleground. I mean, I kind of see Peace Talk and Battleground as the same book because originally they were, but it was just too big and clunky.
All right. What is your favorite food and drink combo? And if it's not pizza and Coke, I'm going to feel cheated.
Well, you're going to feel cheated then because it's burgers and fries.
Burgers and fries. Okay. Well, I'm just saying when I read Dresden Files books, every 5 minutes when Harry's getting a Coke, I'm like, good Lord, I can feel my teeth cracking.
Oh yeah.
That's good. Which character point of view would change our view on Dresden's world the most if we got a chapter or a novella from that point of view?
Ooh, the Merlin probably.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the Merlin he just has bottles of Pepto that Dresden causes him to drink, you know. But he's the one who knows the whole story and exactly how dangerous Dresden is right now. So,
if you could collaborate with one author in any genre, living or dead, who would it be?
Robert B. Parker.
Robert B. Parker. What does Robert B. Parker write? I feel
Robert
bad
B.
for asking this
Parker.
question.
Yeah, he is the author of the Spencer Private Eye series. Okay. You know, all the Spencer movies, all the Spencer TV shows, they all come from his books. He's kind of my hero as a writer. He was, he didn't even start until he was in his 40s, and then he just started writing and turning out these books on a regular basis, and actually died at the keyboard like a man.
No kidding.
That is how I want to go out, doing something cool like that. But yeah, he was my favorite writer, and he passed here 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay, so besides Robert B. Parker, if you had a chance to write in any other author's universe, play in that sandbox, which one would it be and why?
I've got an idea for David Weber's Honor Harrington universe because I want to write some Marines with a tree cat that belongs to one of the Marines there, and he's got like 3 little chevrons in the marking on his forehead, so they call him Sarge. And but the tree cat stuff in Weber's universe is a whole lot of fun, and I would just love to play with that.
All right, I'm taking notes here. You're giving me 2 authors I got to try here.
Yeah, then pick up Honor of the Queen by David Weber. It's the 2nd book in the series, but I think it's really where he finds his footing. Check that one out. It's a lot of fun. It's an excellent book. And then I would probably Larry Correa's Monster Hunter International series. Nice. Larry wants me to write a short story there that's like all the Denarians in the Dresden Files versus the headquarters at Cazador. That would be a lot of fun to write.
It's funny you bring that up because I've gotten 2 series recommended to me that hey, you finished Dresden, you need something to kind of scratch that itch. Is Monster Hunter and the Iron Druid series are the 2 that get out the most.
So Monster Hunter is very much it's the action movie version. So I mean, if you like your military fiction and your gun fiction, then Monster Hunter is definitely for you.
Outstanding. Now I've heard this story a lot in comments of the videos I made for your books. Is the story about the professor that basically inspired you to write the Dresden Files? I want to know, did you stay in touch with this gentleman?
With her. Debbie Chester, and we trade emails occasionally. Still. Most recently, she published her book, which is called The Fantasy Fiction Formula, and she's the one who taught me everything I needed to know to write. So for you wannabe writers out there, check out The Fantasy Fiction Formula by Deborah Chester. Yeah, she was the one who inspired me to do the Dresden Files. I've been writing swords and horses fantasy in her class for years, and finally she's like, when you're talking to me about about story structure, you're always talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You're always talking about Babylon 5. Maybe you should try writing, something that's sort of in that same kind of genre. Maybe you would enjoy that. And I was like, I'm a fantasy author, excuse me. So I resisted what she was trying to tell me to do for a very long time. But finally, one semester, I decided to show her how wrong she was. And the way I decided to do it was I decided that I was just going to do everything she told me to. I was going to fill out all the little worksheets. I was going to be her good little writing monkey, do her little forms and her character sketches. And then she would see what sort of terrible cookie cutter pablum crap emerged from that sort of process. And I wrote the first book of the Dresden Files, which totally showed her.
Yeah. So that's
how wrong she was. But that was how the Dresden Files got started. I'm not necessarily the brightest guy.
Okay, I fear that I'm going to derail this. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm going to derail this a little bit, but I had no idea you like Babylon 5. Now I got to know, do you ever think about writing a hard space science fiction series?
Oh, I already have. I mean, I started writing one. It's called U.S. Marshals, which I decided that I set it 200 years in the future, and where Earth has colonies on the moon and Io and Mars and stations at the Lagrange points and asteroid mining going on. And the entire system got tired of dealing with all the people on Earth who have no idea what their problems are like, when their problems are like, we need air. That's kind of a problem that Earthers are not going to understand. So eventually they took a power collection satellite. They wrote, "Don't tread on me" across the Gobi Desert in letters 30 feet high. And they declared independence from the Earth and declared themselves the United System. And I did that just so I could have U.S. Marshals as the protagonists. Right. And so they're the United System Marshals, and they're the only ones who know about the aliens. And so Earth is sort of on the receiving end of the Prime Directive, but instead of being in a nature preserve, it's more like a hunting preserve, because when contact is outlawed, only the outlaws make contact. So the only aliens who show up are like guys doing illegal stuff, religious fanatics, political refugees, weird scientists doing weird experiments that are unauthorized by the Federation, that sort of thing. Those are the only aliens we see, and the Marshals are the ones that have to deal with them.
And this is out. This is a book that I can get and read right now.
No, it's the first one's like 3/4 written, and I stopped writing it to start the Alera series. I left my protagonist floating in a decaying orbit over the moon with his ship about to go critical behind him and a solar flare coming on, and he's been there for like 10 years.
Wow. So, well, I'd be interested in hearing if he gets out of that situation. What beer in our reality is most similar to Max Ale?
I'm not a beer guy, man. I don't know. I mean, I go to friends for research for beer.
Oh, okay. That's a good idea. Let's see here. Favorite Metallica album?
S&M, the one they did with the symphony.
Nice. Very good. Who is your favorite villain to write in the Dresden Files, and why is it Nicodemus?
Nicodemus is a load of fun because he's the guy that will do anything. Mm-hmm. Is sort of that's kind of his shtick. So it's always fun to have him there because I'll sit down and brainstorm just the worst things he could possibly do that day, and try and figure out how to work that into the book. Then after I do that, so he's a lot of fun. Mab is a whole ton of fun. I regard her as a villain. Marcone is probably the most fun to write because he's the guy who is. He has the limited resources and the, kind of the naked will against all these creatures of incredible power everywhere.
Death Mask was the one where I really was like all in the series because I felt like Nicodemus could have been the big bad on a season of Buffy, and I stick by that. And now Marcone is just like the coolest cat in the world, We all hate him, but we all want to kind of be
I have so much fun with that character, man. Writing the end of Battleground was such a blast.
that was a trip. At first I was like, God damn it, no. And I was like, oh yes. So what music do you listen to while writing, and would you consider putting out a playlist on Spotify like Brandon Sanderson does?
I guess if I could figure out how. It depends what I'm writing. Dresden gets lots of heavy metal. And the heavy metal that I like is often covers of other songs that are very not heavy metal songs, but somebody did a very heavy metal cover, and so that's something I enjoy. When I'm writing the steampunk, I write almost exclusively to Lindsey Sterling, the violinist. I don't know if you've heard her albums, but they're fun.
Okay, who is your favorite not Harry character you've created, and how did you envision this character while creating them? Please be Marcone.
Marcone was an accident. I mean, he started off as kind of a throwaway gangster guy. And then I decided, well, his opening was too cool to leave him like that, because we opened with the soul gaze on Marcone. It's like, okay, no, if I'm going to make this guy a human predator, then he's going to be a tiger, and you will always have to be afraid of him, period. And so that meant that he was going to have to grow in proportion to Dresden. Otherwise, he would not be someone who was scared. So Marcone, as he's been going, he's been gathering resources and various abilities to influence the world around him. Even though he can't do it Dresden's way, he has the advantage of he has no limits, or at least very few limits. So off he goes to get things done. And that's always terribly fun writing Marcone, because I can stop and think, okay, if I was going up against this wizard, how would I manage it? All right, now let me stop and think. I'll go and contact some of my sneaky friends and say, all right, sneaky guys, how do I do this? And they'll be like, oh, I have him operate this way.
As a comic book guy, the comparison I always make to those two is some of the best issues of Superman is when Superman and Lex Luthor have to work together. So whenever you got Harry and Marcone having to work together, and they work really good together, it just puts a smile on my face. I love it.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun to write. Frenemies is the best.
Favorite season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
Probably season 2. I think it had the strongest ending. I mean, season 2 had that really good build up from the big peak at the middle to the big climax at the end. And it was just absolutely merciless and ripped out the hearts of a generation, at the end of that. You get to the end of that where Buffy slays him and banishes him to hell, and Sarah McLachlan starts in.
It's like, just not fair, is it? Yeah.
Wow, I'm done. Oh my God, that was such a good show.
Well, someone else wants to know, Angel or Spike? And I know that you got James Marshall's doing your audiobooks, and you feel like you've got to answer this one way, but...
well, Spike still. Okay. Spike.
Right.
Angel was always a little bit too navel gazy, and when Spike decided to go save his soul, he went out and got stuff done. There was none of this contemplation, morose in silence for hundreds of years, sorts of thing.
Any advice for new writers based on your experiences? Is there anything you would advise new writers not to do or avoid?
Avoid anything that keeps you from getting new writing done. I mean, no matter what you're doing, you should be getting new material published. So, I mean, if you start getting into a place where you are continually revising and editing old stuff, you're not learning anything new, and you need to stop doing that and start writing new stuff as well. So always be generating new material. That's how you learn and grow as a writer. Don't let anything get in the way of you making new stuff.
This is kind of a long one here. Let me make sure I'm reading this right. What have you found to be both an advantage and a disadvantage of telling a story the size of Dresden Files from the first-person point of view of Harry?
Well, the great advantage is that Dresden's point of view is so limited and kind of ignorant that I can sort of adjust things on the fly, because things are happening behind the scenes that I know are happening, but Dresden doesn't know are happening. And if necessary, I can look back at it and go, oh, wait a minute. Let me just pick this bad guy up and put him over here and that one over here, because the audience can't see it yet anyway. And this will be a nicer setup for later on in the story. So that's kind of the good part, is that Dresden is so, he's kind of so blinkered that there's all kinds of things happening that he doesn't know about, that I know about as a writer. So it's convenient for me, so I can rearrange things along the way. The problem, of course, is that Dresden is a character who is so limited and blinkered that I can only show the things that are like right in front of him, and I'm very limited in what I can present to the audience in terms of the various overstory that's going on, because basically the only way for the audience to find out is for Dresden to wander into the middle of it and step on a landmine, and that's how the audience finds out about things.
I know in Side Jobs you wrote some stories from some different characters' point of views. You ever thought about writing one, maybe like third-person omniscient or anything like that, just to see what it felt like?
For the Dresden Files? No, yeah. I couldn't.
No, I couldn't.
I mean, Dresden Files is very much... it's funny because I have a different experience of it than everybody else, because in my head I can see all these other characters and their stories and their viewpoints, and their view of Dresden and, the White Council and everything. And it's all so different than Dresden's attitudes about things. And people are afraid of Dresden. It's not like they go up and casually challenge what he thinks about the world on a regular basis. I mean, he's the guy who can melt you. I mean, if he gets really upset, do you really want to go talk politics with him? No, probably not. You could probably skip that and be just as happy.
Well, there's only one guy that can soul gaze with a Kraken, and the Kraken's scared of him, right? So.
Well, essentially, yeah. That was more a Starborn thing. But anyway, there you go, free one for the audience.
If you could, I get this with everybody. If you could finish A Song of Ice and Fire for George Martin, what would be the last sentence?
I don't know. I haven't read it.
Oh, okay, great.
I watched a really weird question. The last sentence will be, well, better than D&D anyway, right? You know, I mean, that way.
I've got some the real D&D, which is Dungeons and Dragons. I got some of those questions here in a minute.
Nice.
Really, you know what? Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and skip to it. What advice would you give to a new and struggling Dungeons and Dragons player who only knows how to be a barbarian because he just wants to punch everyone in the face? What would be your advice to someone to get better at Dungeons and Dragons?
Play lots of characters. I'm the kind of person who gets bored and switches characters every month or so, and in a weekly D&D game. GMs just roll their eyes at me all the time. But yeah, play more characters, and enjoy it. Think your way through the character that you're playing. Figure out if he's going to be a dummy. Don't try and be the cool guy in the party. Try and be the loser in the party. It's so much fun. If you're the guy that's so dumb you're causing problems for everyone, then that is a much more interesting game than if you're playing Captain Whitebread.
I was told not to ask you about the 4th edition of Dungeons and Dragons. Apparently, it was. I think they said you believed it was like the new Coke. It was so bad.
Yeah. That was. I actually play tested it for I think for Wizards at the time. And had to sign like the NDAs and everything about it. And when they asked me, okay, what is your just sort of general impression of 4th edition? And I wrote back a 2-word summary: new Coke. I think it would have made a great video game. I think it would have made an excellent video game. But as Dungeons and Dragons, it was just so clunky, and the fights took so long, and you had to have like these cards for all your characters' abilities. And it's like, okay, if we were playing a World of Warcraft video game where the computer was tracking all these things, that would be awesome, but we're not.
They just announced.
I'm really glad
right before we got on here.
Retro on the new one.
They just announced they're making a new Dungeons and Dragons movie with Chris Pine, and I said it can't be worse than the one from 20 years ago. I mean, it literally cannot, right? There's no way.
Well,
you don't have the same belief, huh?
We'll see. We'll see what they do.
I watched a panel.
It would be great if it was an awesome movie. I would love an awesome D&D.
Yeah, I would love to watch more than just Lord of the Rings every time I want to watch a good fantasy movie. It would be really awesome if we had more of these things. I watched a panel a while back, right when I had kind of first gotten into Dresden Files. I also like Red Rising series by Pierce Brown a lot. And you two were doing a panel together, I think somewhere in like Arizona. This was like back in like 2016, I think. And I noticed in that panel that you kept, when people would ask you a question about Dresden, you'd be like, yeah, you answer it. And then they ask you a question about Dungeons and Dragons, and you were real enthusiastic about it. And I was like, I think this guy really wants to play some Dungeons and Dragons. So it got me thinking, what is your favorite D&D class, and what class do you gravitate towards the most? I know you say you like to change it up a lot, but which one do you usually find yourself falling back to easily? And it's probably Wizards, right?
Yeah, I almost always play spellcasters. I like playing characters that can like cause chaos and rearrange the battlefield a lot. A lot of control class, crowd control type characters are what I enjoy playing, because you can really have a real effect. A tactical effect is much larger with that kind of character. Mm-hmm. So, I enjoy playing anybody who's a spellcaster. I like playing clerics because I like playing characters with a southern accent and preaching to the monsters and stuff like that. That's always fun.
See, I was new to it, and I felt like right when I was starting to get the hang of it, I went out and bought me some nice metal dice and a nice metal character and all that stuff, and then COVID happened, and now we can't, get together and play anymore. So
yeah, it makes it much more difficult. Lots of Zoom D&D.
Right. Would you ever consider visiting the Codex Alera universe again? I haven't read it yet, but a viewer was very, very sweet about me the whole series, so I imagine that's going to be happening.
Yeah, there's a couple of places to go back. This whole series, the Codex Alera series, is essentially Pokemon versus the Zerg. That's really that's kind of a summary of the series that's fair. It's not exactly overly accurate, but it's fair.
It's an interesting mix.
So I could go back to the series later because the obvious thing to do is to go back to the series a couple of centuries later when the Protoss show up and things really go crazy. And then otherwise I could go back like right after the series and sort of see all the effects, go back maybe 5 years later and see all the effects on society that have happened and everything and how things are changing. and be able to write kind of the new class of the crown spies and so on. That would be a lot of fun to do.
Okay. Will you be, I can't believe this one. Will you be writing a redemption arc for Officer Rudolph?
Writing a redemption arc for Officer I don't know yet. We'll see what happens to Rudy.
Okay.
I don't know. I could see Rudy winding up on a stone table at some point.
I don't think anybody would be mad about that, really.
Yeah.
Why is the Furies of Calderon hardcover so gosh darned expensive?
I do not know. It's hardest to find because they printed fewer copies of that than any other hardback that I've ever had come out. So that's probably why. I mean, that was my very first hardback book, was Furies of Calderon. And I think they only printed 6,000 or 8,000 of that first one. So it's sort of hard to find.
Leaning on to that one, will there ever be a hardcover re-release or first release for some of the earlier books in the Dresden Files series, so people can?
Oh, I'm sure there will be. You know how corporations are. I mean, Penguin's a corporation like everybody else. I'm sure they'll want to do some kind of special release when we get to the end. They might, maybe I can talk them into doing some kind of release where they'll release, 2 or 3 novels in hardback omnibus editions. That might be kind of nice.
After I buckled and bought all the trade paperbacks, I'm sure now they'll probably just go ahead and do that. And
yeah, exactly. Here, all new hardbacks, matching covers. If you line them up, they all line up. The art makes new arts, like that.
As a book collector, I can't say no to things like that.
Exactly.
All right, here's one.
It's like preying on all the poor OCD kids.
That's me. Do you find it hard to kill off your characters, or do you really get joy out of making your readers cry? An example, Battleground. Why, Jim? Why?
Look, I torture my characters because I'm not legally allowed to torture any readers. So the only way I can get to them is through the characters. As long as I have the characters, I do mean things to them. I can get to you guys too, and that's really what this is all about for me.
Well, hearing how you described your favorite season of Buffy, I think I got the answer to that. Yeah, I think he likes ripping your soul out just a little bit.
I do. That's what y'all paying for.
Yeah, if you're getting, it's indifference would be like, I think as a writer, probably the worst thing would be indifference. If you killed a big character and everybody was just kind of like, huh? If people are upset about it, obviously you did something right.
When people get upset about character deaths, that's the best thing ever. That's heroin for writers.
Yeah, well, Battleground, it was kind of rough for me. I got the advanced reader copy, and I was like, this sounds like complaining about having too much money to some people, but I was like, do you know how much it sucked having to be quiet about that for a month and not being able to react to this, you guys? And they're like, oh my God,
I had to wait a year. I had to wait a year after I wrote it before I finally started getting audience response from it.
And hate mail.
Well, some of that, but it's to be expected.
It was very, very good. What are some of the best books you've read in the last 5 years?
Let's see. The Temeraire series by Naomi Novik was a really good one. Check out Benedict Jacka. His Alex Virus novels are a whole lot of fun. There are wizard books that I enjoy, that I go to enjoy when I want a wizard book and I don't want to read Dresden, right. Stuff like that. But Benedict is one of the guys that I'll go look at his stuff and I enjoy the hell out of it. Let me think. Who else have I been reading? Correa's been the last 5 years. Robert Parker, obviously. I've been rereading Zelazny. I've actually been the last couple of years. I've been rereading old stuff a lot that I haven't picked up in a long time. The Prydain Chronicles by Lloyd Alexander. Oh my gosh, they're so good. Go back and reread them. I read them when I was a kid, and going back to them is they still stand up well, and I got to respect the man's skill. Anything by Lois Bujold. Lois McMaster Bujold, I think, is probably the most skilled writer in science fiction and fantasy alive today in most ways. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think her ability to blend plot and character and world into one seamless whole is unmatched by any other writer at this time.
Some good picks. I'm gonna have to make me a new list. This is a tough one. I don't know if you're ready for this. What is your favorite candy?
Let me think. I like the little Annie's fruit snacks. They have like little fruit gummy bears and stuff like that. So the Annie's fruit snacks are my favorite right now.
See, mine's whatever candy my kids are eating, and I get to dad tax it.
Right. Well,
that's all right. Will we be seeing more of Elaine in the future? I think that's a very easy question.
Oh yeah, obviously.
Yeah. That's all he's going to tell you guys. Is Pizza Express based on any specific pizza place?
Oh my gosh, it is, and I forgot the name of it, but I had 3 or 4 friends of mine who were LARPers along with me back in the day in college, and they all worked at the pizza place. And the way the way travel would work out is we'd be traveling to a LARP that was we'd be traveling from Oklahoma City to Dallas. It's 3 or 4 hours down there. But we wouldn't be able to leave until like 3:30 in the morning, where everybody got off their shift. And I would be like the one guy who was awake. And we pile into a car and head somewhere. But man, I can't remember the name of it. It was Pizza something.
So it wasn't anywhere in Chicago?
No, it wasn't. It was in Norman, Oklahoma. But they had a Street Fighter game there that if you won enough rounds of it, you would get a free small pizza. And so it was on my regular rotation of, when I was a young father, going around and getting our pizza dinner for less than $1. Because I could win the Street Fighter game and get a small pizza. Then I could go to the next place and play a Simon game and get a free movie. The next place and play another Simon game and get like a 2-liter and some breadsticks. And so then I'd have the pizza, the 2-liter, the breadsticks, and the movie. Take it all home. It cost me $1, and because it was a quarter to win each game.
And now I'm hungry. You talked about rereading some stuff. Something I've been doing is I read a lot of Stephen King when I was a teenager. And I've started rereading a lot of his stuff a couple years ago, and I was amazed at how much it was different. It has different things that'll hit you from when you were a teenager, and obviously now like kids and stuff like that. So my viewers know me, and they knew that I would love to hear you answer this. Do you have a favorite Stephen King book?
For Stephen King, I'll probably take The Stand. As far as that one goes, I mean, it's a little long, but it's a little long, and it sort of ends a little bit goofy. But the character work is really enjoyable, and once you read it, you're a hypochondriac for like 6 weeks afterward. I mean, that's all there is to it. Yeah,
I did my review for The Stand back in April, right when like lockdown happened. I was like, I did not plan this, guys. I swear to God.
Oh yeah, I watched it.
Was another Stephen King one, was the name He Who Walks Behind influenced by Stephen King's He Who Walks Behind the Rose from Children of the Corn?
No, I actually stole that from Fritz Leiber in a book from the 50s or 60s. But Fritz Leiber wrote a book. I forget what the name of it was, but it was about a guy whose wife was an actual witch, and that was her familiar demon, was He Who Walks Behind. It was just such a cool thing. It's like, okay, I need to borrow that.
Recommend a science fiction fantasy series that not a lot of people talk about.
Ooh, are we talking like books or TV or what?
Hell, do both if you want.
Okay. Let's see.
TV, I'll say Babylon 5.
I really enjoyed the first 2 seasons of Andromeda. I thought that was a totally underrated show. I didn't enjoy it as it went on, but the first 2 seasons were kind of amazing. Let me
when they had Tyr on the show, I thought it was still really good when Tyr was still on the show.
Yeah, exactly. When Tyr was on the show, it was an excellent show. He was a good balance. But let me think. As far as science fiction fantasy series goes, if you haven't read Lois McMaster Bujold's series, the Vorkosigan Saga is what they're calling it now. If you haven't read that, you really ought to. It's some of the best science fiction around. It started off as Star Trek fan fiction and then morphed into her own project.
Okay.
But it would have been a really good Star Trek fan fiction, but it made it even better long-term series. So
I'll be adding that one to my list for sure. To add to the ever-growing long list. Harry's mechanic is named Mike. Did you get this name from the rock group Mike and the Mechanics?
Maybe. I wouldn't put it past me. I mean, at the time, I needed a mechanic, and I got to name him something. Mike. Okay,
yeah, Mike's a good, strong name. I'm a fan of that one. Let's talk about adaptation, because I know this one's got to come up quite a bit for you. Now, I know we obviously had that one version that came out. So I know that the rights, I think Fox has said they were going to do something, and then I don't know if that was just because they didn't want to lose the rights. So basically, is there ever going to be a new version that's going to happen? And if it did, would you prefer it to be animated?
We'll see. There may be a new version. We'll see what happens. It's one of those things that's in development, and you know what that means in Hollywood.
It means they're holding to it.
Yeah, it means they're holding on to it. Hollywood is a place where nothing happens, and everything happens all at the same time, and that's why the folks who work in the business kind of have a reputation for being a little crazy, because they live in everything happening at the same time all the time. It's a tough way to live. I don't know if I could do that business, but it's in development now. We'll see if anything comes of it. I'm actually kind of on the development team at this point. So I'm being able to provide direct input to the scripts, and being able to say, okay, we need a joke here, we need something to lighten up the scene here.
Okay.
And that's been a lot of fun. I don't know if it's going to develop anything because COVID. Otherwise, something might have happened already. I don't know, but things have been shut down in California so hard that nothing new's getting done.
I think in that same panel I was talking about where you were on with Pierce Brown, I believe you said you had like zero contribution to the sci-fi series at all, right?
Yeah, that's correct. They didn't even comp me a copy of the DVDs.
Wow, I wonder why it failed. As far as like animation, I don't know if you ever watch any of the Netflix animation of like Dragon Prince or something like that. When I was reading it, maybe I've been influenced so much by the very famous fan art for Dresden, but that's just kind of what I picture in my head is like animation, and then maybe then you can have James Marsden.
It would be so good. I would love an animated Dresden Files show. Because in an animated show, you can burn down the city or not burn down the city. Yeah. It costs you just as much, either way. I mean, I would be able to write, just the most ridiculous nonsense though in an animated series that you couldn't do on a live action show. And that would be a lot of fun.
Okay, so what is your favorite current TV show that is still airing and streaming counts?
Mandalorian. That's the one I'm really following. I really love the Orville. I think they are clearly having a great time on that show, and that usually sells a show for me. When
the best Star Trek show on TV right now. Yeah.
It really is. It's the second best Star Trek show of all time. I'm not sure which one is number one, but the Orville is number two.
All right, let's ask that one. Okay, here, how do you find your beta readers, and how do I become one? That wasn't me. That was a viewer that asked.
Yeah. I've got a waiting list now that is like really long, and usually there's only 1 or 2 new people a year. Although probably in the next few years, people on the list are going to start dying, so that should make it go through faster.
Oh, how encouraging! Do you ever have have you ever had a character that you planned to kill off, but you changed your mind as you were writing it?
No, I don't think I've chickened out on killing anybody I needed to kill. I have killed some extra people I didn't need to kill, only because I get tired of having so many characters. Battleground was basically an excuse to go, you know what? Let me just move a couple of these people aside, and I don't have to deal with them anymore. This cast is too big.
Yeah, because I won't lie. When I was reading Turncoat, I think it was with Michael, I thought you'd done it. I was like, God damn it, killed my favorite. So I thought you had done it there, and I was like, I wonder if he had actually intended to do it. He just couldn't pull the trigger completely.
No, that was always his. That was always his retirement. That was his ticket out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you intentionally write Buffy references in your books to troll James Marsters?
Not to troll Marsters. I write Buffy references because I love Buffy.
That's the best answer.
I don't mind trolling Marsters. That's that. And now that I know he has issues saying the word little, I'm going to have to work it into like the worst possible times.
I heard him do that interview where you put like little on a page like 25 times or something just to.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can be like that occasionally.
Okay, so not to be when does the next book come out guy, but do you have any plans on when Cinder Spires will continue?
It's the one I'm working on now.
Okay.
So the next book is called The Olympian Affair. Everybody is basically choosing teams for the big war that's coming up between Albion and Aurora, and Grimm's been, Grimm and company have been sent off to Spire Olympia, so we'll get to see a new place, and we'll get to move around a bit more and see a bit more of the world, which I think is. That's always the hardest part about a new book is introducing everything, when you're setting up a new story and you can't explore as much because, you got to say, okay, well, here's how the ships work. Here's how the economy works. Here's how the world works. But eventually, you're able to, once you've got all that set up, you're able to say, all right, now we've got all that set up. Here's where the good stuff starts. And hopefully I can do that in the next book.
I only have one question about the cover art for your books here. And I don't know if this is true, but obviously we know the joke by now about Harry always wearing a hat in the.
Yeah.
Is it true that this character here wears a hat and the artist intentionally didn't put a hat?
He's a British naval captain for all practical purposes. He won't be caught dead without his hat. And so we get him drawn. I at least got him to add the hat in, on the side eventually. But
that is crazy.
But that was a joke between Chris was playing around with me a little, and I appreciate that.
That's fantastic. Awesome. I don't know if this is a typo or like I said, I haven't read Codex or Cinder Spires yet. But it says, who would win in a fight of indifference, Kate Sith or Morale?
Oh, Cat Sith or Raoul. I don't know. Cat Sith has that magical advantage on his side where he's immortal and he doesn't have to eat or sleep or blink or anything like that. So he could probably cheat by being immortal, and Raoul would protest his cheating. Probably walk away.
When Harry asked Cat Sith where his red lightsaber was, I was going to go ahead and let you know that I laughed so loud that I woke my wife up, and she didn't appreciate it. But I had a good laugh out of it.
No, well, please apologize to her for me.
Well, that's a thing. I think that I've really endeared myself to this series because obviously we grew up in similar situations and similar pop culture references. And I love that you put those pop culture references in your, almost kind of like something like a Farscape kind of thing where John Crichton was always making these pop culture references. Everybody's like, what are you talking about? But I think it's the fact that Lord of the Rings and Star Wars are the ones you do the most, and that's two of my favorite things. So please keep doing more of that because I enjoy that. Quite.
I have to. Apparently, I can't not do it. So
yeah, you gotta have at least one Star Wars reference per book, right? Even if it's
definitely.
Did you have an outline for the series with a beginning, middle, and the end, or did you wing it?
Oh no, I had a complete outline of the whole thing before I started.
Really?
Yeah. I'm going to sound a little stupid again. After I brought in the first couple of chapters of Stormfront to my teacher, she read over it and she says, "Okay, you did it." And I said, "What?" Because she was a teacher who believed in preparing her students for the real world, and she did not sugarcoat her criticism. She did not make it gentle for you. She prepared you for publishing, which is kind of a cutthroat industry. She would give me feedback up to and including rolling up my chapters that I handed to her, leaning across the desk and popping me on the head with them and saying, "What were you thinking?" and then tearing it apart. Great. Remind me where we were.
Beginning, middle, and end of your series?
Yeah, beginning, middle, end. So I turned in the first couple of chapters. She says, "Congratulations, you did it." I said, "What?" She says, "You did it. This is of professional quality. I don't know if this will be the first thing you sell, but you will be able to sell this." She says, "Now, I want you to come back in next week, and I want you to bring me an outline for the rest of it." And she meant the rest of the novel. I come rolling in the next week all excited about getting positive feedback from my teacher with a 20-book series outlined with a big old 3-book trilogy at the end to finish off the whole thing. And I go through the whole thing and the entire structural setup of the entire thing for like 20 minutes, just babbling like a kid going on about his first D&D character, and I finally get to the end of it and I look up at her and I'm like, "What do you think?" And she looks at me. She looks at me with that look that you reserve for Wile E. Coyote as he's going off the cliff, because she doesn't want to stop my enthusiasm because she's finally got me on board working with her. But at the same time, she can't tell me, "Look, dude, you're never going to sell a 20-book series, a 23-book series to an editor." So she didn't want to tell me that and discourage me, and because she didn't, I did it. Just kind of got it done. Nobody ever bothered to tell me it was impossible, so I'm doing it.
That's excellent. Well, here's the thing. One of the other questions was, it seems like we always get like a mixed answer. Is it a 20-book series? Is it a 23-book series? Because it's a 20-book series with an apocalypse trilogy. So it is 23, counting the trilogy as 3 individual books.
The original plan was for 20 case books and a 3-book trilogy at the end, kind of like a big doorstop trilogy, like the big books.
And you're sticking to that?
Well, no. Because now there's going to be at least 22 books and then the trilogy.
Okay, so 25. 25 is a great number.
25 is a good solid number, and it gets us more denarians.
Yeah, I'm always on board for there, and I got one.
Yeah, exactly. They show up every 5 books. They're pretty regular.
How do you feel about people seeing Harry and Molly's relationship as a potential romance?
It is a potential romance. I mean, they probably should see it that way. It's also potentially a disaster, and also potentially a number of other things. But at the moment, I mean, it's one of those things that is not clearly defined.
I think you kind of answered this one already, but in one of Brandon Sanderson's lectures in his sci-fi and fantasy writing course, he mentioned a challenge you received to come up with a story mixing Pokemon and Roman Legion. I assume that story was Codex Alera.
It wasn't quite the challenge. Back in the day, it was around 1998, 1999, Del Rey opened the online writers workshop. And the way that worked was that you would log into this forum and you would have discussions about writing. It was a bunch of wannabe writers, and then occasionally an editor or an agent who was very brave would pass through and talk to us. But mostly it was the wannabe writers, and we would just argue about writing. And one of those arguments was sort of the argument that you hit reply and then caps lock and then you start typing, that kind of argument.
Right.
But there were 2 sides of it, and I was a champion on one side. And one side of the argument was arguing that The other side was arguing that if your idea was good enough in writing, that no matter how badly you presented it, that the holy idea would win through. And they pointed out Jurassic Park as an example. You know, it's like that idea was so good, there was no way it was going to miss, even though Crichton didn't really write it very well. That was their position. So they were always on a quest for the new, greater idea. I was of an opposite school, where I was saying the idea itself matters far less than the presentation and creativity of the writer that is presenting the idea. And so I said, how many versions of Romeo and Juliet have we seen? And yet a good writer can still give you a good new Romeo and Juliet if they've got enough good ideas and enough good spin on it. And as a result, it is the writer's creativity that is paramount, not the nature of the idea itself. And so that argument went back and forth for a while. And finally, the guy who was leading the argument on the other side looks at me and says, all right, let me see you put your money where your mouth is. Let me give you a terrible idea for a series, and let me see you write it into something worthwhile. And so me being about 25 at the time and way more confident in how smart I was, I shot back at him, no, I want you to give me 2 terrible ideas, and I'll use them both. So the guy says, all right. First terrible idea is Lost Roman Legion. I am so sick of all the Lost Roman Legion. The Lost Roman Legion should have been found by now. That is the first terrible idea, is Lost Roman Legion. I said, okay, all right, what's the second one? He says, Pokemon. And so I started developing this book where I looked at Lost Roman Legions. That usually means the 9th Hibernian Legion that marched off north of the wall in Britain and never came home. More than likely, they either were killed or they dispersed and settled among the populace. But in my world, they marched off into a thunderstorm and were never seen again. And where did they go? Land of the Pokemon. So the Roman Legion shows up, and a Roman Legion with their camp followers, you can't really find a better colonial force anywhere in history. There's nothing that makes it better. A Roman Legion could build Rome everywhere they went. So the Romans started doing what the Romans did, and they arrived on this new world, looked around, started conquering and building Rome. And I gave them about 2,000 years to kind of ferment a society that became this bifurcated society that was half Roman citizenry based around big metro areas and half German freeholds, because those legions were half German mercenaries, and then started this story, and that was a whole hell of a lot of fun. But I got about 150 pages in. And I went back to the workshop finally, because I'd vanished into working for a week. And I finally went back to the workshop and said, actually, this is pretty good. I'm not going to post it here because we still didn't know how first publishing rights were going to interact with the internet at that time. So I'm not going to post it here, but this is a pretty good story. I think it's a great idea. And the guy goes, oh, you're not going to post it. So what you're saying is I won. And I'm like, yeah, okay, buddy, you won. And so he won, and I got a 6-book deal.
Well, I'd argue that his assignment was a little flawed, because he said a second bad idea was Pokemon. And judge off that, I still see people outside on their cell phones looking for fucking Pokemon, that it was probably a pretty good idea.
Yeah, that was the dumbest thing I'd ever seen, because I'd been watching it in the morning with my kid, and my kid was fascinated.
Mine too. Yeah.
And it was like, okay, I need to jump on this Pokemon train. Yeah.
All right. Can white court vampires get sexually transmitted diseases? I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah, they can. They don't ever suffer from them. They can carry them.
Oh, okay. When will we see Cowl again?
When it's time.
Well, you kind of already answered this one. I'll kind of add to it a little bit. 3 of my 5 favorite books in the series are Death Mask, Turncoat, and Skin Game. If you can't see what I'm doing here, obviously I love the Denarians. I love Nicodemus. That's my favorite part of the whole series. So I'm guessing that book 20 is going to be Nicodemus and the Denarians again. That's a pretty safe bet at this point, right? So that's not an accident.
Nicodemus anyway.
Okay. All right. So I'm saying that's not an accident. Obviously, you did not plan to do this every 5 books, right?
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's there for a reason.
Do you have any new series plans for your post-Dresden Files writing career?
Yeah. There's a Dresden Files spinoff series that I want to do. I'm calling it Monster LLC. It's centered around Goodman Gray, because there are times when you need a hero to help you, but some problems require a monster to solve, and that's kind of what Gray's what his shtick is. He's going to be kind of a darker character, a little bit more vengeance-y based character. but at the same time, you know, I think he's older and a little bit more sophisticated than Dresden, and he interacts with the supernatural world in ways that Dresden just can't. So I think it'll be a lot of fun seeing the supernatural world from a different perspective.
Okay, that's really all I have of these questions here. Anything else you want to talk about? Favorite G.I. Joe character or anything?
Snake Eyes, obviously. I mean, come on.
I got a Cobra Commander shirt, so you know I lose to my kids all the time. So I was like, I lose like Cobra Commander, and they didn't know what I meant, so they got me the shirt. So
well, there you go.
They're sharpest attack. But you know, you try to go back and you show them those things, and they're like, "This isn't good, Dad." I'm like, "Yeah, it is kind of bad." So
it is kind of well, yeah, but you got to go back. You got to go back to like Star Blazers. You know that Star Blazers was fun. Robotech.
See, here's the thing with that is I went back when they were first putting the A-Team on DVD, and I said, you know what, I'm going to watch all of these. I'm so excited for this. And I got a pizza. I bought the first 2 seasons. I watched the first episode. I was like, wow, this is really, really bad. But you know, sometimes pilots just aren't that good. I watched the second episode. I was like, wow, nostalgia is a hell of a thing in it because this is terrible.
Exactly.
That's not how I thought I'd end this conversation by talking about the A-Team. But hey, I am now in that uncomfortable position where I have to wait for a Dresden Files book for the first time, but obviously no pressure there. I have got plenty of other stuff here to read. I still haven't read the short stories, and I've gotten a lot of shit from fans because I did not read the short stories before I read Battleground. So I was like, who is this River Shoulders character? So that's on me, but I figure I can always fill it in Tarantino style and kind of fill in those gaps with some of those things.
There you go. Yeah, you'll like the next one. The next one's going to be a little... we're not going to do kind of the frantic action thing on the next book.
I figured you got to kind of take a breath after the last one.
Oh my gosh! After Battleground, I reread that and kind of went through all the emotional fallout of it that I was going to need to be writing in the next book, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm going to need a book, you know, to do this. So you know, we're going to see Dresden. I think the next one's going to be called 12 Months, and we're going to see Dresden have to survive a bunch of dates with Lara and kind of put his, you know, he's putting his castle together and sort of building his life back up after Battleground knocked it all down.
So he's not wiggling out of this whole deal that Mabs made for him, this arranged marriage, huh?
Well, we're gonna have to look at it and see. But I mean, Dresden. I mean, it's basically the next one's going to have to be a book about how do you put your life back together when it gets blown up around you. And so I think that's what we'll be doing. And instead of just being in the Dresden Files universe for for 2 or 3 days, like we usually are in a story, we're going to be there over the course of a year. And so you'll be able to see kind of what Dresden's life is like in the not frantically, worst weekend of his year period of story.
It's a good idea. So is Mirror, is that off the table? It's no longer called Mirror, or is that just still another idea?
We're just delaying it because I got to do some other stuff first. I mean, if we went to Battleground and the first thing we did was jump away to another universe, I think that would be really disorienting and bad for the story. So jumping away to a parallel universe, I don't think we want to do that right away. But we're definitely going to do it. But I think I can set things up to be a lot more menacing if I have one more book to work with, and I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, hey, what more can Harry go through? Can't wait to see.
Exactly. I mean, it's like that was kind of like what my editor said. She calls me up at the end of Changes, like, "Oh my God, you killed him! And I'm like, "Yeah, now we can do the fun stuff." It's like, "Oh, so he's not actually dead forever." I'm like, "What? Are you kidding? No, this is going too well."
Yeah, I do want to say before you go here about that is I am a reader. I'm not an audio guy. When I try to listen to audio, my mind drifts and I lose place of where I'm at. Or maybe like a reread or something. I could maybe listen to this audio because I've heard James is very good, and obviously being a Buffy fan, I want to hear this. But I had so many people telling me, yeah, that series is great, except for Ghost Story. Ghost Story is not that good. So when I read Ghost Story, I was like blown away. I was like, I love this book. What did you guys not like about it? This is like the character study I've been waiting for him to do the whole time, and all the background, and all that stuff. And they're like, oh, well, James Marsters didn't read the audiobook, so I hated it. I'm like, what does that got to do with the book? So.
Yeah, he had like a family emergency, and they had less than 24 hours to find a guy. And so they basically, it was whoever they could find in New York City on very, very short notice. And so they called me up with like 3 different people, and 2 of them had nothing to do with one of them was Ray Romano.
Now I wish I could hear this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Ray Romano. My name is Harry Blackstone, Copperfield, Dresden. Oh my God. Conjure by it at your own risk. But then the one person they did have though was John Glover, and John Glover had played an excellent Lucifer in Brimstone many moons ago. So I was like, okay, grab John Glover. He's a good guy for that.
I'll always think of him as Lionel Luthor from Smallville, which
Oh,
no
I know.
regrets
Yeah,
watching
he's great in
Smallville.
that as well.
All right, well, I sincerely appreciate this. This is so awesome. I can't wait, obviously, for the next book. I'm definitely not going to be that person who's like, hey, when's the next book coming? Because I'm not that guy. Obviously, you got plenty on your plate. And I've tried, and you've done, it's really weird because a lot of people, when I first started this, said, that's one of those rare cases where the sequels get better and better. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe you're just kind of, I was like, I actually think that might be true now. So
But I like to think of it as me getting less dumb on a steady basis.
I was actually surprised that so many people, when I first started, said, oh, yeah, well, the first two are kind of like the worst ones. And I was like, hell, I love both of them. So I'm in for surprise. So, yeah, it's been a fun trip. You were obviously the author I read the most in the year of 2020. And
Excellent. I'm glad I could provide you some entertainment. What a terrible year.
yeah, it's I definitely feel like I've been put through the ringer just as much as Harry. But awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and doing this. And I can't wait to see what you do next, sir.
You're very welcome, Mike. Thank you very much.